Hey everyone, I hope everyone's having a great day. Live here from this closet in Austin, Texas. Today I'm going to talk about MCP, A2A, and of course Toolhouse, and how with Toolhouse you can do things that maybe, and I'm saying maybe because there's a lot of things out there you cannot do otherwise with all of these frameworks and all of the beautiful things that are coming out every day. It's so hard to stay up to date with what's going on in the world of AI. And so I'll start immediately with the the most interesting stuff is, we've had MCP since November. A lot of people have used MCP now. They've played around with building their own MCP servers. Some people have been building MCP clients to connect to these MCP servers. And then more people are trying to figure it out, the authentication part of MCP, but it's complicated. So how can someone basically keep up with all of this news when there's so many new tools to play? So today I want to talk a little bit about MCP and of course A2A, which is a new protocol that Google released with the backing of like some really big names. And so let's dive right into MCP, and then I'll give you a demo of Toolhouse. So I'm gonna share my screen here. I become a tiny little person, and so let's talk about MCP. If you don't know about MCP is the Model Context Protocol. It's a standard by some members of the technical staff that worked at Anthropic. They came up with this idea back in November. And the idea is that it's like the USB-C of AI tool and connecting to LLMs. So why did they build that? Because when you want to like load tools or like give superpowers to LLMs, it's kind of complicated. There are different models, there are different tools, and everybody's a little bit different. So the fine folks at Anthropic, they were like, what if we can just like make a complex concept like function calling, which is what us at Toolhouse have started, our journey with, like creating very simple to reuse function calls. What if we can make it more abstract and simpler to adopt, kind of like us? So they came up with this protocol, and with the amazing marketing power and amazing engineering work that they've done, they were able to make it a reality. So why does MCP matter? Well, it's because you can use it to load the context into the LLM. And by context, it's like if you want to do a specific task, you can connect to an MCP server via your MCP client. And so the server has the capability to do something. So if it's a tool like send an email, or perhaps it's a prompt, which means that now your LLM understands like how a certain tool can be used, or perhaps it's a resource. So there's a lot of different nuances to MCP, but the most widespread usage of MCP is by using the tools. And so the beautiful thing about MCP, it can be used by humans, it can be used by agents, but the most important is humans. You have a host application like ChatGPT or Claude Desktop, and then inside of this application, which can be written in whichever programming language you want, you can import your client, and then your client connects to the servers. So it's very straightforward. So like I was saying, the important part of MCP is putting information inside of the eyes or the brain of an LLM. They tried to build MCP to sort of like kill function calling, but honestly, I think you'll realize as we go forward with the slides that they didn't really kill function calling. They just made it simpler to be adopted. So like I was saying, you have a host, which is an application that wants to use MCP capabilities. And so this host application, whether it's an agent, a desktop app, a mobile app, something else, it uses the client. And the client allows you to like connect and maintain some sort of state between the client, the server, and the LLM, right? Another thing that you do in the client is like connection management. There's some information that gets transferred in a JSON format between the client and the server, and through the connection management, you know whether you're connected, whether you're authenticated, etc., etc. The servers, on the other hand, is where a lot of people are asking, like, are server just API wrappers? Well, to a certain extent they are, but a lot of people are saying there's a lot more that a server can do. And that is true. You have, like I said, prompts and resources, and we're gonna have a look at that in a moment. But realistically, the most basic server, you expose a capability, you expose a function. Sometimes it can be something that can be, executed on the machine. So for example, if you have Photoshop, you could create an MCP server that allows an LLM to use Photoshop, like the actual application Photoshop. And then you have other applications of MCP servers, like, for example, if you're a project manager and you use Linear or Jira and you want to create tickets or you want to read tickets, change the status of tickets, then the server would basically call certain APIs and perform those duties on your behalf. So if you're trying to automate some work or you're trying to write tickets and use the power of AI, not only you can generate the ticket, but you can also create the ticket on the remote resource, which is like the Jira server or the Linear server or whatever you have. And so the difference between just wrapping an API and using a server is that an API does something very specific and it's very verbose, but with a server, you can basically like combine certain APIs together, reduce the verbosity, and feed all that information that's been cleaned up and more like humanized back to the LLM. If you think about LLMs using MCP, it's a little bit like when you go and you do a Hello World tutorial on a website that has an API or some sort of product. And usually you're not just using straight out like an API, but you're using a library, which actually behind the scenes, the library or the SDK does multiple things for you and makes it really nice and useful. So if you think about that way about MCP, then it comes and it makes sense because it's not a straight wrapper of an API, but it's like a use case. So if you build servers, you need to think in terms of use cases. What should the LLM do with your server? So like I said, diving deep into what's inside of a client, you have a connection manager for authorization and transport mechanisms. Back in the day, you had like STD.io, so like standard IO, and then you have server send events, which is kind of like this new, well, it's not new, but it's like been adopted later into the stage of MCP, which allows you to stream information between a server and a client, right? Of course, as you message are exchanged in this like JSON format, which is, like one of the typical compliant thing, you have like errors and success messages, notifications, and then, if something times out or if you want to terminate, you need to handle all of that through the client. And so this is the beauty of having a client server interface between the two things. So with this JSON RPC schema, which is like very simple to read, that's how the MCP interaction happens between the client and the server. So inside the server, you have like basically these three like primitives of this. I call them primitives. I guess they're the three main things that you can do with MCP. And so you have tools, and here at Toolhouse, of course, we're super keen on tools. Your ability to add superpowers to an AI model, right? An LLM can now do things. It can send emails. It can compile code. It can browse the internet. It can do anything you desire it to do. Then you have resources, and resources are quite interesting because, for example, if I am editing some code and on like VS Code, right? Like I'm writing code, I'm using an IDE, and suddenly there's a bug and I get an error. And so a resource could be that error message. So it's like an attachment that I send to a server from the client, so like I can either copy paste it or whatever. And so then the server knows, oh, this is kind of like what I need to apply the tool onto, when it creates, the combination of the client and the server basically work together. And then you have prompts, and prompts is like the most primitive thing you can think about is like, okay, what exactly does a prompt look like? What can I do with the server, maybe the user is given some prompts so they don't feel completely lost. And so this is very good if you're a user who's using a server for the first time. You're sometimes given a drop down with some prompts that you can like basically use. And of course, if you're an agent, similarly, that becomes very useful because then the agent has more context about what the server is about, right? So here's an example of how MCP work. The client connects to the server. There's a handshake happening, and then suddenly you're told about these tools and these primitives that are exposed by the server. Then the user basically sends a query, like for example, hey, can you send an email? Here's the tools that you have to your disposal to the LLM. The LLM then says like, the user wants to send an email. That's cool. And I hear and I see that there's actually a connected server that can send email. So let me go and use that. Okay, then the client basically sets all this up, sends this information back to the server executes the request, and then the results are sent back to the LLM. And finally, the LLM is like, hey, the server responded with a successful message. That means that I can return to the user that the email was sent. Or perhaps you forgot to specify a subject of your email. So the LLM will say, hey, hold on a second. Before the server can do its work, I need to be able to know what the subject of the email is going to be. And so you go ahead and then you basically give that to the server, and then the server does it, and then you get the answer back. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is A2A. A2A is yet another protocol which came out, and unlike MCP, which is mostly used between a human and an LLM, or between a human an agent and LLM. Now you have this new protocol called A2A, which stands for Agent to Agent Protocol. Obviously there's no P here in A2A, but it's a protocol. And I don't know why they called it, I guess it's just like a nomenclature decision, and that's what they did. So how does MCP and A2A work together, and why are they different? A2A, they're different. They're complementary. Right now, A2A basically allows for your agents to connect to other agents and work together. Almost, if you think about it, like Henry Ford, when he invented the assembly line, you would do some sort of work, and then you would pass it on to someone else who would be maybe specialized into doing another task, and then that would then get moved on to another agent, and so on and so forth. Sorry, not another human at the time, but you know what I mean. So in the example of you're trying to book some travel, you want to go to sunny Florida, or you want to go to a beautiful island like I don't know, Madagascar, and you're like, well, I need a flight there, I need an accommodation, I need something to do, like an itinerary to discover the island. Okay, well, in that case, you need maybe one or two or three agents. Maybe you need a flight, someone that like books the flight for you, something that does research to find out what's open, what's closed, what you can do, and maybe another agent that handles the hotel booking. And the important thing about A2A, it really aligns with what we believe at Toolhouse, which is it's better to have small agents that do one very specific task rather than have one agent that does it all. One agent that does it all seems like very confusionary. It's kind of like AGI, or like, oh my goodness, it's AGI. But it's actually easier to like break down a task into small chunks and give it to an agent that specializes into doing that specific task. And so if you now think about how can you build an agent that connects to tools, that has superpowers, well, that's MCP. But if you're wondering, how do I connect agents that have different superpowers together, that's A2A. So where does that lead us? Okay, so I'm gonna change my screen here and go back to a different terminal here. So, all right, I'm gonna pull up my terminal. Let me just share it. And there we go. Perfect. So I'm gonna make the font larger, and I'm gonna resize it so everybody sees this. Bear with me one second. Perfect. So in this, I'm in the, I'm in the Toolhouse CLI branch, and I'm going to show you how simple it is to use the CLI to build an agent with Toolhouse. And the reason why I want to show you this is because it's going to give you an idea of how you can build agents really quickly and then connect them together, or at least I'll show you what's the roadmap for this. So the first thing you do is you download and install Toolhouse. So you can do that by doing npm install -g and then Toolhouse AI /CLI. So once you do that, it pulls down the latest version, perfect, from the npm registry. And then the next thing you can do is th-help, and you can see there's a bunch of commands here that are pretty cool, and they give you an idea of what the Toolhouse CLI can do. After you log in, which is simply login, you're brought back to a browser, and then once you click on that button, you're all logged in, and there we go. The beautiful thing about the CLI is that you can create agents straight out. That's all you had to do. You set it up, you're ready to go. So the cool thing about the CLI, it's going to suggest you your next action. Very proud of this feature that we added. So like new, and then I give it a name, or I can just do that. And so it's either going to generate a name for you, or I can just say live stream demo, or like, let's just call it live stream. Okay, so what is livestream.yaml that I just created, and how can I run it? Well, I'm glad you asked. So nvim livestream.yaml, and you're gonna see here, there's an ID, there's a title, there's a prompt, there's variables, etc., etc., etc. So like, what are these things? Well, these are the bones of what makes an agent. An ID is to identify your agent in a unique name. A title is just a human readable agent title that you can use to give it a name. So for example, for this demo, we could say a poet. So I could say like this, creative writer, poet, Toolhouse poetry agent. All right, and then you give it a prompt, and here you can use variables, which I'll show you in a second. And I will say, write a haiku about robotic dogs. Okay, so either I can write in the prompt what I want the agent to do. Of course, this prompt can be very long, or I can use a variable. A variable is simply a curly brackets around a specific word. And so here the variable would be, instead of robotic, like subject. Perfect. And then here I would change the variable, of course, to a robotic dog, or just robotic dogs. And then I have to go and change this key value thing here. This is subject, because we said that the variable name would be subject. All right. So now that I'm happy with this, I'm going to go ahead and exit Vim, save it, and voila. So now if I do cat livestream.yaml, you should be able to see everything. And there's more, of course, inside of this file, but we're focusing today on prompt, variables, etc., etc. So the next thing you can do is you can run with the th command here, th run livestream YAML. And what it's going to do is it's going to read the YAML file, and it's going to basically execute the task. So let's have a look at it. There you go. So as you can see, this beautiful CLI that we built here has a prompt. It gives you some information, your agent ID, if you decided to use some bundles, etc., and then the output is streamed back to you. Now, if I'm happy with this agent, I can simply do th deploy live stream, right? And then I can just call it like that. Oops, I forgot the YAML file extension. It's deploying it. And now I am given this unique curl command that I can now immediately copy and paste. This is a public agent, and so there's no authentication needed, which is great. Now, if I query the agent with the curl request, well, there you have it. So where do you go from there? Like, now that you have your agent, you can create an army of agents. You can connect these agents together, because that's the beauty of Toolhouse. We make it super simple for you to create agents that can be assembled together You can use whatever framework you want today. And so as these frameworks like A2A, MCP are evolving, and by the way, wink, wink, I'm just gonna give it to you. We are actually we're beta testing internally the support for MCP for this specific CLI and the agent file. So you're going to be able to create really powerful agent that connect to each other using standards that are outside and they're being adopted by the people in the community. And so I think the end of the story, I just wanted to do a quick stream, is that if you have some tasks that you want to automate, and you know that there are tools out there that can be used through Toolhouse, our own orchestrating platform, or if you want to connect to an MCP server like maybe Linear, Jira, GitHub, Zapier, whatever. There's so many out there, right? Pipedream, there's millions. And all of these like MCP servers out there, they expose many tools that you can use to like create Google Sheets, read your emails, create pages in Notion, create tickets, access your files in Google Drive, access your Dropbox, whatever. You can basically build it, and all it takes is a little bit of prompting and a little bit of typing using the CLI. So this is just why it's beautiful what's happening in the world of AI. All these frameworks are coming together, and we believe that we want to make it super simple for anyone to access this agentic world through Toolhouse with our backend as a service. This is the way that we define it: is backend as a service. We give you all of the tools that you need to be able to create your agent, your perfect agent, and hopefully save you 5, 10, 30 minutes of your work on every task. So you just hand it off to an AI agent that you can call on demand or schedule. So that's the other beautiful thing about Toolhouse. We give you the ability to run these agents, on a schedule. So hopefully that gives you a generic understanding of what is MCP, what is A2A, how you can leverage some of these things in Toolhouse today, and then kind of like an overview of what's coming next with MCP and A2A. They're coming to Toolhouse. And so stay tuned, and thanks for watching. And I hope that I can see you on Discord. I'm going to add a nice reminder that you can simply join us on the platform at toolhouse.ai. You can get help from our own chatbot at help.toolhouse.ai. So if you have any question about the documentation, you can just do that. And then if you want to join the Discord, which I think that's the most interesting, that's where you'll find me. It will be on discord.toolhouse.ai. Come through, say hi. We do hackathons, hack nights, giveaways, and much more. And if you want to get started with using the CLI right now, this is the command that you need to run in your terminal. And I swear we made it super simple to get started. Everything will feel like magic. As long as you have a text editor on your machine, you'll be able to build your first agent. All right. The last thing I'm going to add, we do not charge for your tokens. So if you're building an agent and you want to test it, you don't have to specify any API keys. You don't have to bring your own OpenAI, Anthropic, whatever. And tomorrow there's a big announcement, which makes that even more exciting and fun. But I will see you tomorrow for that. I don't want to spoil it. We're launching something amazing. So stay tuned, and thanks for watching, and see you tomorrow. This is just a reminder for tomorrow, I guess. All right.